What is up? This is Kyle Valenzuela, the one true Kyle, if you will, and we are continuing on our series of House of X and Powers of X.
I have apprehended the leader of the mutant rebellion.
No more mutants!
All right, you egg-sucking piece of gutter trash.
Scott!
Now, today we are touching on Powers of X, but just to recap, last time we discussed the retcons and the new kind of foundations and bricks that Jonathan Hickman is laying. We talked about the Flowers of Krakoa, and soon we're going to find out that that's actually going to be essentially a way for Professor X to become a drug kingpin, and for him to take that drug kingpin money and build an economy that'll allow him to create and form his own nation, sovereign nation state in the future. But that's in the future. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. We're only on Powers of X number 1 right now, folks, if you will. And this issue is interesting because it opens up essentially the timeline to what we are going to talk about throughout this whole run, throughout this whole Jonathan Hickman's run. And you get it in one page. You get XO, right? X-Men Year 1, The Dream, which is the 60s, I imagine, right? The advent of the X-Men, right? Then you get X1, X-Men Year 10, The World. And this is the Charles Xavier you've been seeing with the new Cerebro and the tight bodysuit in black. Very sexy, very superhero-like. Then we move on to X2, X-Men Year 100, The War. This is most likely where we're going to see Days of Future Past play out. The image it shows is an image of Nimron, to give you an idea. So we're going to see apocalyptic things happen. And then we move on to X3, X-Men Year 1000, The Ascension, when mutants and robots evolve into a higher state, a higher being. But then we go on to like a fair, right? And Charles Xavier's just kind of walking through the fair, and he stops and he just hangs out on a bench, checks out some birds walking by, and he's approached by none other than Moira McTaggart. And she come up and she says, "Good afternoon." Charles says, "And the same to you. Are you enjoying the fair?" And they go on and they talk about change, talk about the possibility of futures, right? And Moira kind of says something to Charles. Because Charles is talking of course, a better world and my place in it, to quote Charles. And then Moira says, "Which is the thing, Charles. It's not a dream if it's real." Which piques Charles's interest. He's no longer intrigued. He's a little on edge. He's concerned now. He's like, do we know another? We go back quite a ways, says Moira. And essentially Moira says, read my mind. Read my mind. And this is a pivotal change in X-Men history, if I've ever seen one. right here, Moira's about to change the future. And this is fascinating. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to move on. We are going to move on. And we move on to essentially Mystique, because remember, Sabretooth was captured in the last issue by the Fantastic Four. Mystique got away with the information, and she gives it to Magneto and Charles. Right? And that's pretty much all you get from this. There's a little bit of banter, a little bit of back and forth, but all you need to know is that the information got into the hands of Charles and Magneto. And then we move on to the future, to year 100. And this is we're brought to a very apocalyptic time. We see Sentinels. We see half human, half cyborgs. We're led to believe the nanotech virus has consumed a lot of humanity, and we're brought to these cyborgs that are trying to capture this person, and we get future X-Men now. Future X-Men consists of what looks like a cross between Magic and Nightcrawler. Comes in and tries to save the day. And, fights ensue. Things happen. And then we're introduced to these characters via written word. Like I said, Hickman will just stop the comic to write a novel, write a 2-page short essay on the Sinister Line mutant breeding program, and you learn about these characters. You learn about Rasputin. You learn about Choir. You learn about Bane. You learn about Pride. You learn about Kinney and their powers and how they come to be. But then we move on. We move on. Once again, no, sorry. We do not move on. We cut to Nimrod, right? And Nimrod's with this woman, right? And they're essentially pontificating. And they brought the woman that was captured earlier, right? By the other robots, by the Sentinels. They're brought, and they're essentially interrogating this woman. And what happens is they essentially assimilate her, right? Or no, they take her consciousness, and they strip her body, her consciousness from her body, and she becomes an empty shell. And then we move on to what is the future. We go to X-Men Year 1000. Before that, I should say we're introduced to a couple of things. We're introduced to this Rasputin character who comes and we're introduced to Wolverine, right? An older Wolverine, Krakoa, the living being of Krakoa. Someone that's not Magneto, but in Magneto's outfit. And another character I do not know. Well, I don't exactly know. One thing I want to point out that I forgot to point out was that the Hounds, the Canil, I think that's how you pronounce it, which are essentially the organic shells, the machine brains. That was the thing that Nimrod was trying to get information from, and essentially turned into an empty shell. And that I should point out that Hickman states that there's only 8 mutants remaining at this point in time in the solar system, and that the rest remain with the Shi'ar Empire. So moving on, we go to year 1000. And this is the point when mutants achieve ascension. And all we get in this point is, all we know is that humans and mutants are both this kind of nano-organic, techno-organic hybrid, right? I imagine they have their techno-organic virus at this point. Like, we're far beyond the techno-organic virus at this point. I said should say. I can speak, people. And all we see is these higher beings, these ascended beings, looking at humans in what looks like a zoo. And then that's the end of the issue. And as always with this issue, it's ended with a quote, and this quote is from Rasputin. Remember, Rasputin is the Chimera. You know, I didn't really touch on chimeras too much, but it's their third generation chimeras. Rasputin's an amalgamation of up to 5 X genes. It has a 10% failure rate, but it's the third generation is the first generation to achieve success. And that's where you see Rasputin and some of these near mutants that you're seeing in this future. Not in this future, sorry. In the year 100, not year 1000. So this quote's from Rasputin, and it's, "You've forgotten that machines have no soul, and that the humans lost theirs a long time ago." And we're going to end this episode with this issue. So catch us next time. Do all the things that you do with podcasts. Give them the stars, give them the likes, all the subscriptions, whatnot. And we will be back for House of X issue number 2. Catch you next time. Peace.